Now, this is not one of the videos where I'm going to tell you to quit your job today and become a content creator or become a YouTube creator. That's not what this is. Let's be real. I left my big girl finance job because I actually got sick from the amount of stress I was experiencing and the toxicity at the job. Point blank, period. Hi everyone, welcome back for another episode of the WellwithTiff podcast, where I'm sharing my own holistic wellness journey in the hopes to inspire some of you all to pursue your own journeys as well. As a first generation here in the States, just trying to make it in the world, build that generational wealth that my family dreamed of coming to the States, it certainly hasn't been easy. But I have learned a lot of lessons and tips along the way to help me find balance and, more importantly, find my own voice and find my own passions and work towards them. So it is possible, and I want to inspire you all out there to live your authentic and dream lives too. I'll be sharing things like the mindset shifts that I made, practical habit changes, recipe ideas, helping you to eat cleanly, as well as living your authentic selves. They go hand in hand. And all of this is in the hopes that you all can live better lives and that it is possible. And so if that sounds interesting to you, please stick around. I really want to build a community around this. And I hope that you all find not only helpful information through my content, but also that you find friends and you find that community that you were looking for. So the last few videos, we talked a lot about gut health and improving the gut health and foods that you should focus on eating and how to put this into practice. And I feel like that's the basis and the foundation for leading a healthy, cleaner lifestyle. It all starts with what you're putting in your body. So I'm really glad that I went through that series, and it sounds like you all really enjoyed it. Thank you so much to all of the subscribers that I have so far, and the feedback you provided, and honestly the motivation you all provided to keep going with this content. I am gonna shift gears a little bit to talk about why I actually decided to leave my big girl finance job. Now, this is not one of the videos where I'm going to tell you to quit your job today and become a content creator or become a YouTube creator. That's not what this is. Let's be real. That's oftentimes not a realistic possibility for people, and it might not even be something they actually want to do. So let's stop pushing that on people and let's just be real about things. I left my big girl finance job because I actually got sick from the amount of stress I was experiencing and the toxicity at the job. Point blank, period. I had to figure out what was going to work for me and my life and what priorities I had to make sure that I accomplish each day, each week, each month. There's so much content out there telling you to just quit whenever, quit if it doesn't feel right. But you have to be realistic with yourself. And so this video is going to be almost a reflection on that time period in my life when I quit that big job, the job that I thought I had made it with, the job that I thought was my ticket to success, and what I did to realistically pivot to pursuing things that I was actually passionate about. So let's go ahead and get into it. So why did I go into the finance industry to begin with? So as a first generation student in college, I honestly didn't know really what you could pursue in college. I just knew I wanted to study business. That's what my parents had harped on growing up. It seemed like the ticket to success. So I went with that path. And my college was very pre-professional, so it was very easy to just kind of get one track mind and be really focused on that. I went in and the world was my oyster. I didn't know anything about stocks and bonds, and the whole world of finance was new to me. But one thing I noticed was pretty much all of my peers and friends were either pursuing finance or consulting or tech industry, things like that. And so very quickly I had to decide what path I was going to be on, because that also set me up for what classes I was going to take, what clubs I was going to join, who I was going to surround myself with for the majority of my college career. And so I ultimately picked finance, and more specifically real estate finance, because that made sense to me mentally. And at the time, it was the classes that I was enjoying the most. So I went ahead with that path, and that was that. I started taking internships in the industry and really threw myself in fully without really considering any other options, without even listening to the voice in the back of my head, which was always telling me, don't you want to have an impact in the world? Don't you want to do something good and feel like you're making a difference? I kept that in the back of my mind because my family had always said, you can do that on the side. Once you make money, don't even worry about it. You can pursue whatever else you want to on the side of your main job. So that was just always my focus, was to get a good job. And when I graduated and got into the finance industry, it was truly a wake-up call for me, because it's one thing to be like learning about it, and it's a completely different ballgame when it becomes your actual career. I think I finally woke up to the fact that everybody was so different from who I was in that industry. What I mean by that is, when I went into the finance industry, again, I did not have the same background as everybody else. Most of the people in that industry, they come from wealth. They come from families that have been in the business and finance world for generations. So it's ingrained in them. For me, it was a whole new world, a whole new way to live. A good example of this is, I would try to be in a conversation, I had to code switch. I had to be professional. I had to not really refer to the honest experiences of my past and my family, and I had to try to assimilate and blend in with what they were talking about and what they were used to. Skiing, that was a hot topic all the time in the office. Every winter, everyone was going skiing or going to their family cabin in whatever location. Everyone had second homes and vacation homes. It was always just these crazy stories of the wealth that everybody had already lived and experienced and had. And I just had to shake my head and nod at what they were saying. What else could I do? I didn't have any of those experiences. That was one sign that I wasn't really meant to be in this industry. You can code switch all day long and act like you know what's going on and fake it till you make it, but it'll slowly chip away at you. Why I ultimately decided to quit, though, wasn't necessarily all of that, because I felt like that was fine. That came with the territory. I wasn't the only one experiencing that. There were probably millions of people trying to make it too, and they just make it work. What honestly did it for me was the constant stress and the constant urgency around literally everything. I actually felt anxious going into my job every day. So I'm not going to get into too many details of the progression of how I ended up getting sick. I will link the video where I talked about this in greater detail here, so you guys can go ahead and watch that. But the TLDR is that I ended up getting physically sick and experiencing gut and digestive issues related to all of the stress that I was under for several months. And that was what led me to ultimately decide to quit. I realized that I was constantly giving my everything to this job in this industry and not even taking care of myself, not even taking the time to realize that I was sick. I was trying to ignore that for so long. And so when I ultimately decided to quit, it was a decision that was a long time coming and I was slowly preparing for. It was a hard one because I needed to break free from what I was used to. So the last point I want to bring up before I talk about how to quit practically and still pursue your dreams is that you need to make that mental shift in your mind. When all you've ever been focused on for years and years and years is making it, getting that job, getting that success that your family has always wanted, you need to actually break that mindset. You need to realize that making it doesn't necessarily mean getting the top job ever, getting the most amount of money ever right out the gates. What it means is a slow progression, building up and finding opportunities that maybe your family before didn't have access to. I didn't think about it that way initially when I went into college, and honestly, I do wish that I had. But when it came time for me to quit my big finance job, I finally started to think that way. I changed how I was thinking about things to, I need to find a career in the field that I'm passionate about. I need to be able to make money and still make sure that I'm hitting all my priorities, still making sure that I'm taking care of my responsibilities. And once I can do that, I can build a life around that. I don't need to sell my soul for majority of the workday, for the majority of the week. I was working 12 plus hour shifts at any given day. Like it was ridiculous. And that wasn't considered overtime. That was just kind of silently expected of you. That's no way to live. You need to find the balance. And so once I made that mental shift and I started talking to my family about it, guess what they told me? They told me it was completely okay. They wanted me to be happy. They didn't realize that I was so stressed and so overwhelmed all the time. That was also something I never really talked about. I mean, yes, they knew I was working really late hours and working all the time, working weekends sometimes. And my mom always used to say, why don't you divide your paycheck by the actual amount of hours you're working and see if that's actually worth it? Which was funny because I used to think she was just being hard on me. And now I realized she was actually thinking about the fact that I was working way too much. I, at the time, thought I just needed to keep working because that's what people do in their early career. They grind it out, and then in the future, they find some balance. So when I actually brought up to my parents that I was very unhappy in my job and I actually hated it and it wasn't what I wanted to do at all, they told me I need to find what I actually want to do. They told me they didn't care about any of that. They just care about my happiness and my health. They just want you to be okay. And so it was a real wake-up call for me. So now we're going to get into how to quit realistically. I say this because I feel like there are so many people online just saying, quit and become a content creator, and they're making it seem like it's easy, but it's not all that easy. This video is not about that. This video is about quitting realistically and building a life that you love. A life that you love doesn't necessarily mean become a content creator. Building a life that you love means finding a job that you enjoy and you don't mind spending 8 hours of your day at. Or if you're part-time, 4 hours a day. Think about it. If you're spending such a large chunk of your day doing something, shouldn't you at least enjoy or care about what you're doing? I had none of that at my last job. In the finance job, it was literally soul-sucking, and that is no joke. And so I made sure that I started to do a few things to set myself up to be able to quit comfortably. And the first thing that I want to emphasize is that you cannot just quit with no plans. That is a recipe for disaster. It's going to stress you out even more. So it's really important to think about how you can start setting yourself up to be able to make that decision and put your 2 weeks notice in. The first thing you need to do is you need to assess your finances. See where you're currently at. Do you have enough saved up in case you don't find another job in time? Do you feel comfortable hitting all of your monthly expenses without a job? How much do you need to save up if that's not the case to be able to comfortably quit? Think about ways that you can be more frugal. Think about ways that you can start saving even more money than you already are on a monthly basis. Think about expenses you can cut out. Do you really need to get that cup of coffee from Starbucks every day? Probably not. Do you need to eat out all the time? Probably not. Can you invite your friends over and cook meals? Do you find different ways to be creative and start saving more money? That way you can do what you actually want to do with your career. It's not hard, and simple changes can have a big impact. So another thing you can do is if you're living in an expensive apartment, maybe consider taking a break and living with your parents or splitting rent with someone for a little while. Think about different ways that you can lower your expenses to make your decision come more quickly. The next thing that you can do is look for jobs as you have time. People have been calling this quiet quitting for a long time, and it does work. You're still doing your job, you're still doing what you need to do, you're still hitting your responsibilities at work, but then on your lunch break, you're looking for jobs. Outside of work, you are looking for jobs. You can put busy blocks on your calendar when you need to take interviews or when you need to make phone calls, different things like that. And as long as you are still getting exactly what you need to done at work, this can be a realistic way to start pursuing the things that you care about while still getting your current job done. Another thing that you can do is to build more boundaries and more balance around your job. This can be hard in the finance industry, trust me. It was easy for me to just be focused and just constantly pour myself into the job without thinking twice about it. But once you realize that you are doing too much, it's going to become easier for you to start creating boundaries. You can start being a little bit more hard on when you're starting work, when you're ending work. You can be a little more mindful about blocking off your lunch breaks and not sitting at your desk working through your lunch and not even taking a moment to be mindful and eat your meal in peace or eat with friends. You can also try to take more mindful breaks. Try to take a moment and meditate, or you can go for a walk during your job. I do have a video on balancing stress while working, and so I'll go ahead and link that video here and you can watch that for even more tips and tricks on how to find a little bit more balance during your job. But I do want to emphasize that it isn't easy when you're in the finance industry because that's just not the norm. But you can be the person that starts making the norm. We have to start making these mental shifts, not just for ourselves, but for everyone in this industry, honestly. All right, the last thing that I do want to talk about is if health is a concern for you, or if you're feeling extremely stressed and extremely burnt out, extremely anxious, and I really hope it's not the case, but if you are feeling like digestive issues from all of that, or literally if you're feeling anything, take that into consideration and make that your priority. Health is our greatest wealth, point blank period. Taking all things aside, I went into the finance industry for monetary wealth, and I thought that was it. That was the key to success for me and for my family. But what I didn't realize was health is the actual wealth. Health and time, to be honest. And so that is what I prioritize now. And when you're working and you're constantly throwing yourself at your job, you're not making time for yourself and prioritizing your health. So if health is a factor for you in your decision to leave your job, prioritize that. Take time off. We all have PTO and we don't utilize it nearly as much as we should be. It's a part of your compensation, so go ahead and use it. Take time off if you need to. Ask for a leave like I did. I asked for several weeks off so that I could heal myself. That was not the norm in my industry, and I was very nervous and terrified to ask for that. But I desperately needed it, and so I did. You shouldn't get to the point where you desperately need it. If you're starting to feel like things are off for you, ask for some time off. Reset. Utilize that time to heal, utilize that time to reflect and figure out what you want to do, and go from there. It's completely okay, and it should not feel like you're being a burden or that it's not allowed. That should not be the case. So let's break that mentality, let's ask for a time off, and let's take it and use it. So that's my story of why I decided to quit my job. It's what everybody says it is. If the job is toxic and it's stressful and it's not being additive to your life, there are other jobs out there. It is completely okay. Especially in the earlier parts of your career, you can pivot, you can recover. You'll have plenty of time to try different things in your lifetime. And so why should you be stuck at a job that you absolutely hate that's sucking your life away? You can always do something different. Remember that. If you found some of what I said really helpful, or maybe it even resonated with you, please comment below because I would really love to hear from you all. All right, I will leave you all with that for now, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.